For the longest time, there was really only one number that mattered when it came to weed, and that was THC percentage. The higher the number, the better the weed was supposed to be. That was how everybody shopped, that was how dispensaries sold it, and that was how strains got famous. But then, near the end of the 2010s, a strain came out of Los Angeles that flipped that entire idea on its head. It was not the strongest thing on the shelf. It was not breaking any records for potency, but it tasted like a slice of vanilla cake. It looked like it had been rolled in powdered sugar, and people went so crazy for it that it became one of the best-selling strains in the entire country. This is the story of wedding cake, the strain that proved flavor could beat potency. So let's start with where it came from, because this strain is the work of one of the most important breeders of the modern era. His name is Anthony Hart, but in the cannabis world, everyone knows him as JBeezy, the founder of a genetics company called Seed Junky Genetics. And his story is the classic come-up. He started out breeding weed in a small garage in Southern California back in the early 2000s, just hunting through plants, looking for the special ones. Over the next 2 decades, he built Seed Junky into one of the most respected genetics houses on the planet, behind a ton of strains you've definitely heard of, like ice cream cake, kush mints, and gelato crosses. But one of his crown jewels, the one that really changed the game, was wedding cake. Now here's where the story gets a little tangled, because the genetics and even the name of this strain come with a bunch of confusion. So let's clear it up. At its core, wedding cake is a cross between 2 strains, Triangle Kush and Animal Mints. Triangle Kush is a legendary indica out of Florida, named after the 3 big weed cities down there, Jacksonville, Miami, and Tampa, and it's widely believed to be a descendant of the almighty OG Kush. The other parent, Animal Mints, is another Seed Junky creation that's absolutely loaded with Girl Scout cookies genetics. That strain came from OG Kush crossed with Durban poison, which means when you trace it all the way back, wedding cake has some seriously deep roots. So when you put them together, wedding cake is really a child of 2 of the most important families in modern weed, the OG Kush line and the cookies line. But technically, wedding cake isn't even its real name. When JBeezy made that Triangle Kush and Animal Mints cross, the actual lineage name was Triangle Mints, and wedding cake was just one specific standout plant he found in that batch, officially labeled Triangle Mints number 23. The real wedding cake is actually clone only, meaning the true genetics come from cloning that original Triangle Mints number 23 plant JBeezy selected, which is part of why authenticity has always been such a big deal with this strain. So how did it get the name wedding cake? That came from a famous Los Angeles growing crew called the Jungle Boys. They got their hands on the seeds, grew them out, found this incredible phenotype, and named it wedding cake because of the way it smelled and looked, like sweet vanilla cake frosting on a bud that's so frosted in crystals, it looked like it was dipped in sugar. You'll also sometimes hear it called pink cookies, especially up in Canada, because of the pink and purple hues it can show. And just to clear up one more big myth, because it's all over the internet. For years, a lot of websites listed wedding cake as a cross of cherry pie and Girl Scout cookies. That's actually wrong. JBeezy himself had to go on Instagram to correct it. The confusion happened because there's a different strain called birthday cake that actually is cherry pie crossed with Girl Scout cookies. And because the dessert names were so similar, everybody just mixed the 2 up. So if you've ever seen that cherry pie genetics listed, now you know the real story. So let's get into what it's actually like, because this is the whole reason it blew up. Wedding cake is an indica-dominant hybrid that has beautiful-looking buds. They are dense and chunky, dark green with purple accents and little orange hairs, and they are absolutely buried under a thick coat of white trichomes, which is exactly where that wedding cake dipped in frosting look comes from. The smell and flavor are where the real magic is, though. It is sweet and tangy, with a distinct vanilla cake and frosting note, backed up by an earthy, slightly peppery, almost sour undertone. It genuinely tastes like dessert. The dominant terpenes behind that are caryophyllene, limonene, and myrcene. And here's the thing about those terpenes. Scientists call this the entourage effect. The idea is that cannabinoids and terpenes work together to shape the full experience. So it is not just about the THC number, it is about how all those compounds interact. And the high is a perfect two-part experience, starting with this uplifting, happy, euphoric head buzz, then slowly melting down into a deep, relaxing body calm, which makes it a perfect evening wind-down kind of strain. The THC levels usually sit somewhere in the low to mid-20s, which was not that strong if you compared it to other strains that were out around that time. But even at those levels, it still was a top seller, which was unusual for something with the THC levels it carried at that time, because for years, like I said at the start, the whole weed market was obsessed with THC percentages. People just bought whatever number was highest, assuming that meant it was the best. But around the mid to late 2010s, that started to change, largely thanks to the rise of the cookies and gelato strains coming out of California. People started caring less about raw power and more about flavor, smell, smoothness, and that Instagram-worthy bag appeal. Weed lovers started treating it kind of like wine or craft beer, where the experience and the flavor mattered more than just how hard it hit. And this all happened right as California went fully recreational in 2018, which opened up the legal market and let strains like wedding cake reach a massive mainstream audience that never had access before. Wedding cake was the perfect strain for that exact moment. It had an unforgettable dessert flavor, a beautiful frosted look, and a balanced, enjoyable high that almost anybody could appreciate. It didn't need to be the strongest. It just needed to be the most delicious. And it was. Wedding cake became one of the best-selling strains in the entire country. It won Best Hybrid Flower at the 2018 SoCal High Times Cannabis Cup. And then in 2019, Leafly, one of the biggest cannabis platforms in the world, named it their strain of the year. Weedmaps was tracking it just as hard, with comparisons being drawn to OG Kush and Girl Scout cookies in terms of its potential long-term impact on the industry. At that point, it was showing up on over 10,000 dispensary menus across the country, in flower, in vapes, in concentrates, and in pre-rolls. It became a top seller in major markets like California and Washington, and people started comparing it to all-time greats like OG Kush and Girl Scout cookies in terms of how influential it was becoming. Not bad for a strain that won on taste instead of power. But wedding cake didn't just sell well. It became a building block for the entire next generation of weed. Once it proved how powerful that sweet, dessert-forward flavor could be, breeders started crossing it into everything, and it became the parent of a whole dynasty of cake and dessert strains. Cross it with gelato, and you get ice cream cake, which became a huge hit on its own. Cross it with purple punch, and you get wedding crasher. Cross it with Kush mints, and you get LA Kush cake. The list goes on, and a huge chunk of the sweet, frosty, exotic strains you see on shelves today can be traced right back to wedding cake. So when you step back, wedding cake is really more than just a strain. It's a turning point. It's the moment the cannabis world officially shifted from chasing the highest number to chasing the best experience. It proved that flavor, smell, and beauty could matter just as much as potency, maybe even more. And it basically wrote the blueprint for the entire modern era of designer, flavor-driven, dessert weed that dominates the market today. All from a strain out of Los Angeles that just happened to taste like cake. So, what about you? Have you ever tried wedding cake or any of the strains that came from it? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives like this one, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.